Unit 5, Video 5, Compromise of 1877. We already did that. Plessy versus Ferguson's in this one. Jim Crow laws in this one. We're going to talk about why Reconstruction failed and say goodbye to American History I, and I'll see you in American History II. The Panic of 1893, we will talk about that in American History II. But just to give you a general idea, tie a bow here on the economics of the South during Reconstruction, they do not industrialize. They stick to their agrarian society or their agricultural base. This will lead to a problem in the Panic of 1893. High supply, they're producing too much tobacco, too much cotton, too much you name it. And so as supply goes up, price goes down. And so they can't sell their goods for as much money. And you combine that with a railroad issue and a bunch of other things, and you have an economic collapse. Stay tuned for that one in American History II. Can't wait. Segregation. We have separate societies, a area for blacks, area for white, and basically all public spheres. We have schools separated, you name it. For right here, we're going to focus on railroad cars. So, you ride the bus today, or you fly in an airplane today, maybe you even ride a train today. Different train cars were for different people. They were segregated. And Plessy versus Ferguson is going to be a court case that challenges segregation, or the separation of people based on race. So Plessy down here in Louisiana, Horace Plessy is going to say, hey, I want to sit here. They're going to say, you got to move to the back. Oh, no, they made him move. This violates my civil rights. This violates the 14th Amendment. All of us should be treated equally under the law. So let's give you the APUS history version of Plessy versus Ferguson. He wants to ride on the bus. They say no. He's going to sue so that he gets his rights. It goes to the Supreme Court, and ultimately the Supreme Court will rule in 1899 as part of the Plessy versus Ferguson case that no, this is okay. You're still being treated equally because you're getting to ride on the railroad car. It doesn't matter if you're in the front. It doesn't matter if you're in the back. It doesn't matter if you're in the third car, in the seat that's by the window or not by the window. As long as you are still getting equal access, we can separate people. So this does not violate the 14th Amendment according to the Supreme Court. They rule that yes, you can separate. Segregation is legal as long as everyone gets access. Oh, with separate restrooms, as long as you get a restroom. Separate places at restaurant. Yeah, as long as everyone gets access. Well, we're going to deal with this in American History II, Unit 9, when we talk about civil rights. But you need to know that the ruling of Plessy versus Ferguson in 1899, according to APUS history, is that the court decided that segregation is legal. It is okay, as long as everyone gets equal access. So separate but equal will be the rule moving forward. Now, let's go to the non-APUS history story. This is not going to show up on your test. This is not part of common knowledge. So if we're just trying to build common knowledge and basic facts so that we communicate with other students, with other adults, and be decent citizens, that's good enough. Now, if you want to go to the next level is the railroads. And the railroads realize that separate railroad cars, that's expensive. If I got to have a car for white people, I got a car for black people, guess what? I have to have two cars. If I only had to pay for one car, it would be a lot cheaper. And they would only need one car, or they would need fewer railroad cars if everyone could just sit in the same stupid car. Why don't you people just get in the same car? Why does everyone need a separate car? Why do you hate those people so much they have to get in a separate car? It's costing me too much money. That's often going to be the background story that doesn't get talked about a lot in your AP US history guidelines or any of your American history tests, that underneath this fight for civil rights, in the background, but a serious part of the story, is always money. These businesses lose. Think about it this way. If I am running a restaurant and I've got to build a restroom, cool, I build the restrooms. Oh, wait, you got to build restrooms for blacks too. I now have to pay to build more restrooms, and I have to spend money to keep more restrooms clean. That's just one example of how racism is very expensive. Racist laws will make you go broke. The railroad realizes that, and we got to get rid of these laws so we can get some money again. So as much as you want to tell the Plessy versus Ferguson story of from the angelic view of where are fighting for rights and equality, and that is sort of true, but you also have to accept at the same point, there are people that are fighting this fight because they want to make money. And that's going to be true all the way forward. And that's true today in many social causes. Sure, in social causes today, there are groups and people that are fighting truly for the cause. But there are also people that are a part of that fight, part of that cause, because they see an opportunity to make money. So the railroad company's going to set this whole thing up, and it's going to go to the Supreme Court and say, all part of the plan. Now let's just wait for the Supreme Court to say, that's racist, and they can't do it anymore. And then the Supreme Court says, nah, you guys can keep doing this. No, wait, what? It's racist. You can't do this. You can't have separate railroad cars. This violates the Constitution. What are you doing? We're broke again. No. And so it backfires. It doesn't work out for them. But that's not going to be on your AP US history test. Just trying to give you some objective truths and reality. So black codes will be replaced, lead to Jim Crow laws, which are completely okay according to Plessy versus Ferguson. The Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal. And so we're going to get laws of discrimination, which aren't really going to violate the Constitution too much. You still have to give people their rights, which is a separation from black codes, but discriminating based on race, you can do that according to the Constitution or according to the Supreme Court, as long as everyone kind of gets equal access. So we get Jim Crow laws, which is named after a minstrel actor. Get more information from, you want to hear about Jim Crow and that stuff, check out Renegade History. Segregation, separate groups, you know it. So segregation will be a part of this time period. Also, part of this discrimination is going to be disenfranchising black voters, because if you disenfranchise black voters, that will establish Democrats in your state legislative governments. It'll establish Democrats in the federal government. And from there, we're going to pick it right back up to where it was before with, before the Civil War, when the slave power was pushing laws and pushing pro-slavery. Well, so now we're not going to bring back slavery, but by disenfranchising Republicans, disenfranchising black Republican voters, the white Democrats are going to regain the power in the state legislative branches. They're going to regain federal power. They can't bring back slavery, but they can bring back Jim Crow laws. They can bring back laws that discriminate. They can set up government institutions that do not favor black Americans. They're going to try the best to create two societies. And this is all going to be set up through Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution, which says the states get to control the elections. Now, they can't take away their voting rights, but they can start doing discriminatory practices by making black Americans pay a tax to vote and not making the white Americans pay a tax to vote. And you can see a receipt. You can also make them take tests, literacy tests, or just mind teasers will be given to black Americans, but not white Americans, because it's discrimination. And this is technically legal because of Plessy versus Ferguson and a handful of other laws. So this will be the way of the South. They're not taking their rights away, but they're discriminating based on these rules they're imposing so that the Democrats can have power, so that the Democrats can continue to push a Jim Crow segregated South. You can see an example. You can see examples of these tests online. I think the Selma movie does a really good job at the very beginning. Just watch the very beginning of Selma. You can see Oprah Winfrey's character have to face a literacy test. I think they have her name like all 80-some judges in the state of Alabama or whatever it is, which is a ridiculous question. She can't name them all. And so she fails. That's discrimination because they don't make everyone take that test. They make black people take that test. And that's part of the Jim Crow South. And that's a way that the Democrats were able to maintain power. And although they couldn't maintain slavery, they could maintain racism. Lynching is too big of an issue to really spend in one of these videos. But there's plenty of other opportunities to find out basically the abhorrent nature of just literally murdering people without due process, murdering people based on racism. It's terrible. Let's talk about why Reconstruction failed, and because this wrapping up the failure of Reconstruction really does help you understand some of the bigger themes in social studies, at least the biggest theme from my perspective. Now, obviously, for the test, and for the most part, in conversations with most other students, with many of your teachers, with citizens, the general accepted knowledge, and that's what we believe in, the basic facts, is that Reconstruction failed because of racism. That's okay. That's fine. If we're having communication, trying to understand the country, that's okay. But if you're going to take that understanding and that knowledge and then try to take it to the next level of activism or using this concept to push some sort of policy, well, that's where you're going to have problems. If you just have a general understanding to build up on other knowledge, but I would much rather have the objective truth and build up on that or something closer to the truth, something more evidence-based. Yes, racism is a part, but racism is going to be a part of every issue throughout U.S. history. But it's not the only issue. Race is not always the biggest thing going on with every issue. We can agree with that. When we talk about World War II, most people say, yeah, there's racism, but that's not the big deal. And it's easy. We don't really talk much about that. We can talk about the Vietnam War. Sure, racism and race was a big issue, but it wasn't the biggest issue. And so we're okay compartmentalizing that. But for whatever reason, with Reconstruction, mainly because it dealt with Black Americans, we have trouble saying that, well, maybe racism isn't the biggest reason for the failure of Reconstruction. So let's get away from the AP US History Guidelines view for a second. Remember, this is not going to be on the test. This viewpoint is not going to be on the test, but it's important to see different viewpoints. The idea of Reconstruction is the government's going to go fix the South. Physically, not a problem. They can rebuild. And we've seen this in Afghanistan, which, I mean, Thaddeus Russell says that the South was our first Afghanistan. And it really is. Rebuilding Afghanistan physically today, or Iraq today, that's not the challenge. The challenge is reprogramming people to a new way of life. That is hard to do, as I said in the last video, on a one-to-one basis, let alone a government is going to come into basically foreign territory and tell all these foreign citizens, here's the way to think. Imagine you today, a country or a government invades where you live and says, all right, here's the way to think. You're probably not going to be very receptive to that idea. And so obviously, this doesn't fail because it's too big of a task and it's a foolish task. A fool's errand. And the best way to understand this is A Conflict of Visions written by Thomas Sowell. And we can see it pretty much broken down. I really, really think this is maybe one of the best books ever written, especially if you want to understand society. So we're going to use a couple of his key points. This one, and then another one. So let's start with the first one. Sees man's nature as malleable. The people that have the unconstrained vision believe that man is changeable. Man is perfectible. That's the unconstrained vision. The constrained, or the restricted vision, the tragic vision says man is flawed. Men are selfish. We are fixed. We cannot be perfected. We can't really be that changed. And if we are changed, who's to say it's for the better? The Unconstrained has this utopian vision of, we can make everybody perfect. And so this unconstrained vision is what the vision is during Reconstruction. This, we can fix the South. We can change the hearts and the minds of the Southern white man. We can change the hearts and the minds of the ex-slave. We can tell them what to think. We can train them. We can perfect them. The constrained vision says, no, you can't. You have no idea what you're about to get into. You are trying to do something that you cannot achieve. Also judges laws by intentions, and so we'll get into that. So first of all, the unconstrained vision, which was the radical Republicans, which has been repeated today in other policy issues, they think that they can go into the South and just say, here's how the way to be. Here's the way to live your life. We're going to train you, and everyone's going to accept it. We're all going to agree, and we're all going to love each other, and hooray. What if someone says, no, I don't think that's the way I want to live my life. No, I don't necessarily agree with all of your ideas. I don't agree with all of your principles. That's not the way that I was raised. What if someone says no? What if a bunch of people say no? Then what? And that's the problem you run into. But the unconstrained vision says, no. If we work hard enough, we can do it. We can change minds. The constrained vision says, no, it's not the way it works. People are selfish. People don't necessarily change. And if they do change, it's for their own selfish interests. They're not just going to willing abide by what you say for the better of mankind. It doesn't work that way. We're cavemen. We're animals. We're not naturally angels. So the unconstrained vision during Reconstruction thinks we're just going to go in, and if we just spend enough money, we just use enough resources, we can change everyone's mind. And that was the view of the radical Republicans today. It's often the view of the Democrats today. We just got to spend more money. We just got to put more resources in. Eventually, we can fix them. Eventually, we can malleably change them. We can perfect them. How foolish does that sound today? I mean, we've seen this mistake in Afghanistan. We've seen this mistake in Iraq. We've seen this mistake in America. We know, but yet we still repeat this mistake. We learned it ourselves during Reconstruction, but the problem is we didn't learn it during Reconstruction because we've been told that Reconstruction failed because of racism. Reconstruction failed because it was never going to work. This is not a sound policy. This does not work. The constrained vision. So the unconstrained believes that society should be led by the strongest and the most capable among and under the right institutions. So as long as we build the right government institutions and the right government organizations and the right government agencies and programs, and if we build these programs, the programs and the agencies will go and fix the people. The constraint says that people just need to be restrained. They believe that political leaders have the same flaws. They are selfish too. They have the same fixed nature as everyone else. And there's an importance of separation of power and constitution. They're saying that these institutions are made up of people, and people are selfish. People are flawed. There's no some magical formula in using an institution. So this ain't going to work either. This isn't going to work just because you're using institutions or programs or agencies. Those are made up of people. People are flawed. People are selfish. This isn't going to work. This is too grand of a scheme. Next thing, the unconstrained vision judges laws by their intentions. The constrained judges laws or policies by their effects. So when Reconstruction fails, well, we were trying to fight racism. Great, that's your intentions. You had the greatest dreams ever. You had these big plans. Well, it didn't work. It failed. It failed beyond imagine. It led to 50, 60, 70, maybe 100 more years of racism. It made racism worse. You took away, you made it worse for blacks in the South. Yeah, but we were trying Reconstruction. We really went for it. It doesn't matter what your intentions were. It doesn't matter what your goals were. What were the results? And the results were it was a disaster. You made it worse. Lynching, Jim Crow laws, segregation, you name it. This happened because you failed, and you failed because you had these, but I had good intentions. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's the unconstrained vision. That's the constrained vision. And we'll repeat the same thing with the Great Society in the 1960s. We're trying to fight racism. Yeah, but you didn't work. You failed. You had great intentions, but your policies didn't work. Let's look and see what you did. It failed. Let's stop doing it. Let's change. We keep falling for this. We keep repeating this, and we keep making things worse. Look at Reconstruction. Instead of learning from our failures, now it's just racism. Okay. So then we do the Great Society about 100 years later, and it fails. And instead of learning from the failure, instead of learning from the problems with the unconstrained vision, we just say, it's racism again. Sure, racism had a part in the failure of both of these programs, but it is not the only problem. The problem is the unconstrained vision. The problem is the unconstrained vision. And I'm not saying that the constrained vision is right, but I'm saying that these people need to understand each other's views and the way that they think. So what would I do? Well, I would have said, oh boy, you're dangerous here. We need laws that are going to treat people equally, period. That's the job of the government, to make sure that people are treated equally. We need the government to make sure that people's rights are protected, and the government probably also need to educate all Southerners, Southern white and Southern blacks, and lift them out of poor, provide the opportunity for economic mobility. Everything else, brainwashing, telling people how to live their lives, putting the military in their backyard, all that other business, probably too much. Make sure the laws are equal. Protect the rights. Give education opportunities. And then let the people figure it out. They will. Here's your two options. Let the people figure it out with fair laws, or you tell the people what to do. Tell me which one's going to work. Which one has a better track record in American history or in world history? Letting the people figure it out, or the government comes in and tells people what to do? Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, government comes in, tells people what to do. How did that work out for you? Government goes down into the South, tells people how to live their lives. How did that work out for us? Maybe just once. We make sure that people are treated equal, we have fair rights, and then we let the people work it out amongst themselves. Now, we're also going to make sure that no one's getting killed or murdered, but people, anyway. That'll do it for American History 1. I'll see you in American History 2. Maybe I'll even see it in Civics and Economics. Social Studies Games.net. Be there or be square, or be there and be square.